This talk honestly had me at, well, let me ask you a question. What's the most well-known popular AI of all time? What would you guess? Anyone, any guesses? Skynet? Oh, that is like a good movie one, but like a real one. A real one that ships in products, or has shipped in products over the years. It was not a very good one. I'll give you a clue. Clippy. Clippy. Which is surprising because Microsoft's now known for pretty decent AI, but back in the day they had truly the worst AI ever. So when I heard it talk about Clippy and browser extensions, I was like, yes, you had me at Clippy. So I know, they were slow though. Anyway, without further ado, let's give it up for Ante.
Hello, HalfStack. Can you hear me well? Yeah. So I just want to introduce myself first. I'm Ante. I'm from Croatia. I'm a full-stack JavaScript developer. Mainly I work with Next.js in the last few years, but I also like Rust. I do a lot of coding in Rust actually on the side. I think it has some great new opportunities for the web and beyond. No Clippy, I don't code in PHP anymore. You can run JavaScript on the server now, so we don't need that anymore. To help me with this talk, I'm gonna have my faithful friend from the office, Clippy. I'm sure everyone or most of you heard of him. So he's an old Microsoft Office assistant, as Dylan said, and yeah, he's gonna bother me more throughout the talk, but let's see how it goes. I'm gonna talk about browser extensions, kind of like a speed up course, which you can hopefully take home and start building your own extensions. But before we move to that, I just want to go through the brief history of browser extensions. Of course, it all started with no Clippy. We rehearsed this last night. And he wanted me to say it in like Anthony Hopkins' voice, like a deep voice, but I'm not going to do that. You can just imagine that. In the beginning there was, of course, Internet Explorer, which was a first browser that ever offered extensions. It was actually in the version 4, and all that I remember is version 6 of Internet Explorer, so that was quite before my time. After that we had a lot of different, Clippy knows him well too. We had a lot of different browsers. We had Firefox from Mozilla, Opera, and of course Google Chrome, which is now probably like the main browser you all use because just the popularity and market share is huge for it. And yes, somewhere along the way, Apple also made their own browser, Safari. Like a pretty colorful bunch. I like to call them like Ninja Turtles, which would mean like Safari Splinter or something like that. And the problem there was that all of them had different ideas of how to build browser extensions. Some of them had similar ideas, but if you wanted to few years back, if you wanted to create a browser extension that would work across all of these browsers, you would have to use like a lot of polyfills and cheat codes and stuff like that. So it was like a pain in the butt. But fortunately, I don't know, is it 2 years or something, but Opera moved to Chromium. Edge, it's also now Chromium based, so you have all of them like on this Chrome umbrella, and on the other side you have Firefox. So we have a standoff. Well, it's not it's not that dramatic, but the idea is that, of course, Google is pushing its own browser APIs, which are called Manifest. Currently, they're transitioning from version 2 to version 3. And Firefox has its own WebExtensions API, which is mostly compatible with the Google's version. version 2, but not quite. So even though we have only these two options, it can kind of get a little bit confusing. So this is actually a cheat sheet that you can quickly look at to see what kind of support can you expect if you choose any of these APIs. So as I said, if you choose Manifest API, you publish your extension on the Chrome Web Store. It works across all of these browsers or any other Chromium-based browser. Microsoft Edge and Opera also, actually have their own stores which you can publish to, but they will also accept installation from Chrome Web Stores, which is great. So I would currently recommend to just going with Manifest API because you get a great like all-around support. And on the right side, you have Firefox, which of course has its own add-on store. And yeah, Firefox is kind of lonely there, but Mozilla is actually doing some great work with tooling and actually polyfilling all the parts that it's not supporting from Manifest API, which I will get to at the end. But yeah, you can actually like pretty easily create cross-browser extensions that will, maybe you start with Manifest API, polyfill some stuff to Firefox, and it works. So for now, I think Clippy was bugging me enough, so I'll say bye to him. We'll catch back with him a little bit later. And what I want to do, as I said, this is kind of a TLDR talk, so I want to show you actually some code snippets that will be your guide of how to actually create a browser extension quickly. I will have all of this linked at the end with all the references, example template repo on GitHub, and so don't worry about it. You'll have everything if you want to check it out later. So actually, all you need to create a browser extension is just one file like this, and it's called manifest.json. When you create it, you need to specify a version. As I said, currently we need to use version 3 because all new submissions to the Chrome Web Store actually require that version. And you just like specify a name and the version of your extension, which of course you increment when you post updates and stuff like that. And yeah, you're ready to roll. Basically, you go to the Chrome extension page in your browser, toggle this toggle, and there you have it. You use this load unpacked button, which opens File Explorer. You point it to the folder where your manifest.json file is located, and it's ready to go. You actually have fully working browser extension. It doesn't do much, but it's up and running. You get some like background debugging tools, a refresh to just like refresh the files after you change something, stuff like that. And yeah, you're ready to go. So I guess, of course, you want to add some real functionality to your extension. And the best thing to do that actually is by defining a background worker, which is kind of, you can think of it as a backend for your extension. You just pointed, this is just an addition to the manifest.json file I was showing earlier. So you just point it to your, in this case, background.js script, and it will load it up when the extension is installed or opened. So why do we, this is the example of like beginning of the background.js file of our background worker. And you might be wondering why do we have this like message listener, stuff like that. That's because the background worker is actually an isolated process which no other like website or script can access, only through the messages. So the best thing to do is to actually like, I like to have like a type on each of my messages. So then I can like do feature detection based on that type. And then if type is ping, you do something. If type is pong, you do something else, stuff like that. So this is just kind of a way of structuring your code to allow to add other features down the line. You can also, this is just an example with if statement, you can for example, use switch or enums or whatever you like. So how do we actually send something or interact with the user from our extension? To do anything user-facing, you need content scripts. Content scripts are more like any other JS file you will include inside of your website. And you define it by specifying also the path, but the special thing is that you can actually define where do you want them loaded. So for example, if your extension works across many different URLs, you can define like, okay, this particular all URLs is a wildcard, so it will run on all URLs, but you can just specify like your URL statically or with regex. So it's useful. You can split up your extension in parts with different features for example, different websites. And all frames means do not load my extension inside iframes. So this would be the example of our content script from earlier. I just like to initiate it like async main function, kind of like C++ style, but just enables me to use promise and async await syntax easier. And we basically use Chrome runtime, which is the global object that you get when you're running in the extension context. And we just use send message. We point it to, because this is the content script is the part of the same extension, you can just use Chrome runtime ID, which is the ID of your extension then. No need to hard code anything. And of course, I send a message. And when response is back, I just log the message into the console. But of course, you can do so much more. You may have noticed that in content scripts, they are running in a different like isolated extension environment, but you actually have access to the DOM, to all the browser APIs, so you can do anything that any other script would do. So you can manipulate the DOM, add stuff to it, execute JavaScript, anything. So this would be just like content script that logs the current page inside of the console. So okay, we learned some stuff. We learned how to create our required extension files, load our extension into the Chrome DevTools so we can run it, test it, communicate with extension through the background worker, and also use special extension APIs as Chrome runtime. And now I would like to do some demoing, and I would like to call Clippy back. I don't know where he is. Sit down. Does this fit now, or? I don't have a PhD, so I'll have much more problem with this. Okay. Can you hear me? Is it good? Okay. So I don't see Clippy, but let's see. Let's see where he should be. Let's go to the HalfStack website. And there he is. So he finally managed to escape Microsoft. And I guess he switched to Chrome, but yeah, he's here. He's actually here. Okay, I said he should be saying something, but yeah, okay. Hello back, Clippy. So how did he do it? Of course, with the help of browser extension. This is actually an extension that I made a few years back. It's called Clippy, of course. And what it basically, it adds Clippy to any website. And he's just as annoying as in Microsoft Office. How I got this idea is that I stumbled on this Clippy.js package. It's available on S'more's GitHub. And basically, they managed to extract all the original animations and assets from the original Clippy, which was great because I could just use it as a JavaScript package. And then what I did is just reuse that animations, integrate into the extension, and added some custom logic to make him extra pain in the butt. Yeah, so how it works is that if I change the website, he's just like hanging down. He would do some like specific animation. He's currently just blinking. It's really random, so I don't know what he will do. He will also, like on the HalfStack page, he will say, okay, so yeah, he got me there. Yeah, so you just, if you switch the page, he'll pop up again and just do his stuff. If you're wondering from where does he get all of these messages, that's actually another fun idea. It's all actually hosted on GitHub, on the public repo that I hold. It's called Clippy Dictionary. And what it has a bunch of files that don't mean anything, but this Clippy JSON is the main JSON file where everyone can contribute their keywords, which are basically can be a part of the URL or the whole URL. And you can just add different messages to for Clippy to say. So for GitHub, I think we have a lot. Netflix. Throughout the years, a lot of people made pull requests, so I was happy that it grew. I added like initial few messages, but currently we have a, I think, pretty good database. Of course, if you have your own website, you want Clippy to bother you, you're free to contribute. I'll also have this linked at the end. But yeah, that's kind of an idea with Clippy. But what I wanted to actually show you is some integration that you can do. This is Clippy's homepage. It's kind of a Siri themed and dramatic, the Apple way. But what's interesting is that actually what you get on this website is that you have this toggle which you can use to turn Clippy on and off. So yeah, he actually has that original animation, if anyone remembers it, with the bike. So yeah, with this is the example of how you would integrate your website with your extension. How you would do it, it's really simple and close to the messages example I made. So you just define externally connectable property. It's important to define it because without it, anyone can actually send messages to your extension through that channel I showed earlier. So by defining this, you make sure that only your websites can actually send messages. It doesn't hurt you, but security-wise, someone could just send like fraudulent payloads to your extension, break it, and so yeah, you can, I think, also just define empty array, which would mean no one can access it if you don't use this feature, but it is good to define it. And then you just use the same listeners as before, and this would be kind of like code that I run here. So on the click on the toggle, I send the current status to the extension, and then the extension does all the work of removing or adding Clippy to the DOM, loading his JS and everything else. Yeah, so that's just kind of one way to do it. I'll actually leave him open so he can you can see what else he can do. But what I would actually like to show you is another example of an app I did quite recently. It's a visual scraper, which lets you just open any URL. For example, we can use HalfStack again, and you can just scrape things from it without any code. You export the config, run it through the terminal, wherever you want. But to actually, okay, I forgot to remove the extension because I wanted to show you something. Okay, let's just reload it. So yeah, for this app to work, I needed to create a companion extension. And when you actually want to install the extension from an app, tricky thing is that you cannot do it without redirecting to Chrome Web Store, which is kind of bad user experience because then you might expect your user to go back to the app. But fortunately, there is a way to mitigate that. you can register this uninstalled listener inside of your background worker, which would then trigger in the moment of the installation of the extension. As soon as it becomes active, it will trigger this. And what I do is to just use Chrome tabs, which is another global object that you get when you're inside of an extension, and just create a new tab, make it active, and redirect back to my app. So just to show you how that works. Yeah, so extension is added, and you're completely restored back to the app, which is quite better user experience. And yeah, this extension actually loads the content scripts inside of an iframe, and it then, wherever you click, it extracts the unique selector back on the left, and then what you can do is download that config and copy this piece of code, which will just run the npm available CLI package, and you'll get a nice JSON with all the data that you would, for example, use for scraping, like text content of the elements, class names, etc., depending on the element type. But more interesting in the context of browser extension is, why do I even need an extension to offer something like this? Well, when I tried to create it first, it was really easy. Matteo was talking about 80-20 rule. But I quickly figured that not all of the websites loaded into my iframe here. And that's because there is X-frame options HTTP header, which if it's set to deny, Chrome will just refuse to load the extension inside of iframe. But fortunately, we can mitigate that with the extension. So what we can do is to declare the declarative net request permission and request it for all hosts. Again, the wildcard, because I want every website to be scrapable. And then what you can do is define a rules JSON file right next to your manifest JSON. And this is the action that modifies headers. So when the response comes for any network request, just strip the X-frame options header. And that actually works, because then the Chrome receives the modified response, and you get this. It actually works. So it's a really cool way to do this kind of a browser inside a browser thing. You can also add headers, modify them. There are also different types of actions, but I won't go through all of them. This is maybe useful in context of like ad blockers or stuff like that. Yeah, so just to close this up, I would like to talk quickly about packaging your extension and actually publishing it to the web store, because you can offer it as a standalone, anyone can load it up and packed, and but it's better when it's served on the official store, and regular non-developer users will then more easily be able to enjoy it. So you can use the pack extension button up there that will just, you point it to the manifest JSON, and it will pack it up, create a zip file that you can then publish to the web store. But what I would recommend better is to use one of Mozilla's tools. They publish this on NPM. It's open source, WebEx. And what it gives you is this handy build script, which basically does the same thing, but you get a lot more options. So for example, by default, it will build for Firefox store, but you can use the target to create your extension and package it for Chrome Web Store. There are also many different options. You can use validation. So for example, validate your manifests that it's up to spec. You can run a development mode, so like hot reload, stuff like that. They also offer the polyfill I was talking about. So it's called Web Extension Polyfill. I will link it. It's also linked at the end of the presentation, which you can load, instantiate your global disk. You don't use global Chrome object, but you use the polyfills version. And then you just build your extension with all the same APIs. Mostly, both of these extensions that I showed today can be done through the polyfill. Clippy is available on Firefox, Opera Store, and of course Chrome Web Store. So yeah, it works really well. And yeah, this is the link if you want to scan it or go to it, kickass.click TLDRX. It is just pointing to the gist where you can see all the links and stuff that I mentioned throughout the presentation. And yeah, if you want to contribute to Clippy Dictionary, feel free to do so. And yeah, that will be all from me. Hope you learned something. Yeah.